What if the future of a country depended on the bitter rivalry between two powerful women? Imagine a struggle where one represents secular values and the other a more extremist viewpoint, and their clash threatens to shape the nation's destiny. How did the feud between Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia impact Bangladesh, and what does it mean for the country's future? Explore their story and find out how their personal conflicts have influenced the course of a nation. In 1975, when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, a squad from the Bangladeshi army raided his residence in Dhaka. On the night of August 15, 1975, they attacked his three different houses in Dhaka, killing 8 people, including Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his wife, his 3 sons, their wives, a grandson, and a couple of relatives. It is said that this entire operation took about an hour and a half. Fast forward 49 years to August 5, 2024. In Dhaka, the same city, the Prime Minister's residence was once again the scene of turmoil. Sheikh Hasina, who was the Prime Minister at that time, was at the Prime Minister's house. In the morning, Sheikh Hasina's security advisors informed her that there was a rapidly growing crowd of protesters throughout Dhaka, many of whom were heading towards the Prime Minister's residence and the Awami League Party office. The crowd was extremely angry. The news of anger and violence had already reached her. A day before, on Sunday, around 100 people had died, including 19 police officers, and reports of violence were coming from all over Bangladesh. People were extremely enraged, forgetting issues of reservation and demands for apologies from Sheikh Hasina. Their sole demand was that Sheikh Hasina resign and leave her position. On Monday morning, Sheikh Hasina's security advisors informed her that the situation was critical and her life was in danger. The crowd was so large that no one could do anything. Additionally, the Indian government had sent a message indicating that anything could happen, and her life was at risk, advising her to evacuate immediately. Following this, the army chief, General Waker Uzzaman, spoke with Sheikh Hasina and said that the situation could worsen further, and they might not be able to do anything if it got worse. Time was very short, the crowd was advancing rapidly, and he informed her that she had 40 minutes to pack her belongings and leave. He assured her of a safe passage, stating that they would provide an Air Force plane for her evacuation and would fly her to any location she specified. During this time, Sheikh Hasina spoke with her son and daughter, who were both outside Bangladesh. Her daughter was in Delhi. They advised her to evacuate immediately. After considering her children's advice and her advisor's warnings, Sheikh Hasina agreed to leave Dhaka. She informed the army chief that she would resign and requested to be evacuated safely. She submitted her resignation in writing, boarded a helicopter, and was flown out to Hindon Air Base near Delhi. The entire evacuation process, including the helicopter and plane arrangements from the Dhaka Prime Minister's residence, was completed within 40 minutes. Sheikh Hasina was evacuated successfully within this time frame. After her departure, the army chief met with the president and recalled another Begum, who was imprisoned for corruption, requesting her release. Her release was then facilitated. These are the 2 Begums of Bangladesh who have held power in the country for the past 30 years, Khaleda Zia and Sheikh Hasina. However, these are the 2 Begums who have never been on good terms with each other. They are not only political rivals but also have a peculiar animosity towards each other related to 2 murders. Their enmity is so extensive that it is often a topic of discussion in Bangladesh. It is said that if these 2 women were to face each other, they might even kill each other. One well-known story about their rivalry in Bangladesh revolves around Khaleda Zia's date of birth. Khaleda Zia, who has served as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh twice, has conflicting dates of birth. Her 10th grade certificate states that she was born on August 9th. However, her marriage certificate lists her date of birth as September 5th. Furthermore, her passport shows her date of birth as August 19th. Thus, there are 3 different dates of birth for Khaleda Zia: August 9th on her school certificate, September 5th on her marriage certificate, and August 19th on her passport. There were 3 different dates of birth, but the real story begins with the 4th date of birth. It happened when Khaleda Zia suddenly announced that she would change her date of birth. She declared that she would celebrate her birthday neither on August 9th, nor on September 5th, nor on August 19th. Instead, she would celebrate it every year on August 15th. This announcement caused a stir because it was seen as an attempt to provoke Sheikh Hasina. The intention was to celebrate on the day that marked the assassination of Sheikh Hasina's father in a display of enmity. The rivalry between these two Begums was such that one believed her husband was involved in the assassination of the other's father, while the other believed the reverse. This conflict between the two Begums was intense and lasted for a long time. This is why, for 30 years, they never spoke to each other amicably. There was even an incident where an American expression landed in Dhaka and wanted to bring both Begums together at a public function, but it never happened. Bangladesh, which has been independent for 53 years now, saw 15 years of military rule, and the remaining 30 years were marked by the rivalry between these two Begums. Their story of enmity dates to the roots of Bangladesh's independence. One of the roots of this enmity is the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, known as the father of the nation, and the other is Khaleda Zia's city, Patiala, related to the killing by Hindu extremists, which has always kept a distance between the two Begums. However, their enmity did not start immediately. They were once friends. On August 15, 1975, when the Bangladeshi army raided Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's 3 homes in Dhaka and killed him and his family, 8 lives were lost, including Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his wife, 3 sons, their wives, and a grandson. Fortunately, that night, Sheikh Hasina and her younger sister Rihanna, the 2 daughters of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, were not in Bangladesh. They were in Germany. The reason was that Sheikh Hasina's husband was a nuclear scientist living in Germany, which is why they were safe. However, when they received the news, they wanted to return to Bangladesh, but by then the army had taken control, so it was dangerous. Advisors advised them not to go, but they had no choice, so the sisters went to New Delhi. After arriving in New Delhi, they sought assistance from the Indian government. They were given shelter in a special house in the Lajpat Nagar area. Sheikh Hasina and her sister stayed in Delhi for the next 6 years. Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, after the assassination of Mujibur Rahman, the army had taken control, and those who had become part of the Bangladeshi army included Ziaur Rahman's wife, Khaleda, and their 2 children. After the army took over, Ziaur Rahman assumed full command of Bangladesh and became president. On May 25, 1981, a faction of the army was against Ziaur Rahman. They believed that the army officials who had killed Sheikh Mujibur Rahman were close to Rahman, and that Ziaur Rahman supported them. On that basis, some senior army officials went to Chattagram on May 25, 1981, and stayed at the circuit house there. That night, a conspiracy took place among the army personnel, and those who were supposed to protect Ziaur Rahman were involved with the traitors. Late that night, Ziaur Rahman was assassinated by gunfire, and once again, the army took control. Afterward, General Ershad took over the control of Bangladesh. Ziaur Rahman's wife, Khaleda, was now a widow. Because there had been a coup, Khaleda Zia established her own party, which became prominent, and she became a political figure. However, with the army in control, she had to tread carefully. Despite this, she continued her efforts as best as she could. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, gained prominence, while Sheikh Hasina, along with her sister and children, stayed in Delhi during the aftermath of her father's death. As 6 years passed, the situation in Bangladesh began to improve, and demands for democracy grew. At this time, her supporters suggested that it was necessary for her to return to politics. Sheikh Hasina agreed and returned to Bangladesh in 1981. Once there, she began a campaign for democracy, calling for the end of army rule and the resignation of General Ershad. This was the first time that Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia came together, as they shared a common enemy and both desired democracies. They jointly led a movement, leveraging their combined political influence to challenge the army's rule. In 1991, Bangladesh held elections again. People believed that Sheikh Hasina would win due to her lineage as the daughter of Mujibur Rahman, and the power of the Hasina family seemed overwhelming. However, Khaleda Zia won the election and became the first female prime minister of Bangladesh. As soon as she took office, relations between the two political figures, Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia, began to deteriorate again. The initial goal of removing the army from power had been achieved, and democracy was progressing, but both women were heads of their respective political parties and were vying for dominance. This rivalry escalated to such an extent that it led to violent clashes. Sheikh Hasina often claimed that her father, Mujibur Rahman, was killed by army personnel close to Ziaur Rahman, while Khaleda Zia contended that the threats against Ziaur Rahman in 1981 were orchestrated by Sheikh Hasina's supporters. After that, Sheikh Hasina returned to power, and she has been a dominant figure in Bangladesh for the past 15 years. Even though in two of those elections the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, won. With a substantial majority of seats, the opposition parties were largely sidelined. Even though Khaleda Zia might have won in recent elections, it is said that old corruption files were reopened and investigations were launched against her and her son, leading to their disqualification. Sheikh Hasina then won the elections decisively once again. During her tenure, Sheikh Hasina achieved significant progress, transforming Bangladesh into one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. However, her rule has also been marked by a display of authoritarianism, with tight control over the judiciary and media. In Bangladeshi politics, the situation now is defined by the two prominent figures, Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia. Khaleda Zia is currently out of the political game and even out of Bangladesh, while Sheikh Hasina remains in power. There is a possibility that Khaleda Zia might play a major role in future governments, but the impact of her return would need careful consideration. The major concern for India is the ideological shift. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his party, the Awami League, promoted secularism, granting freedom to all religions. In contrast, Ziaur Rahman and Khaleda Zia hold more radical views and have connections with Pakistan. Sheikh Hasina had banned various religious organizations linked to Pakistan and removed their influence. The danger now is that with Khaleda Zia's potential return, there could be a resurgence of extremist forces and a risk of military rule. This shift in power could also reignite the influence of extremist groups, with Jamaat-e-Islami and its student wing being of particular concern, as their opposition is believed to have ties with Pakistan. This makes the situation in Bangladesh quite volatile, and there is a real risk